Welcome to One Rake at a Time. I'm your host, Art Jones, and today I have a very special guest with me today, Michael Shapit. And Michael is one of the people that works on the crew with me out there in Kings Bay, out in Cedar Cove, with our restoration project of Cedar Cove. And Michael is the site supervisor or one of the team leaders of the cleanup, and he's been doing an absolutely fantastic job. And the other thing that's really exciting about Michael is his background. Michael, can you tell the audience a little bit about your background?
I graduated from the University of West Florida in 2013 with a natural science degree, which is hydrology, geology, and a lot of nutrient chemistry.
Mm-hmm. So you studied all about this stuff that it's kind of nice to get right in there to an environmental cleanup, isn't it?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Sometimes when I have questions, I'll ask Michael, like, what is this? And he's like, he got the answer. He did well in school. But anyway, the project that we're working on, we just completed a $100,000 grant, and we removed an awful lot of Lingbia. In fact, I think the total for just the $100,000 was 717 tons of Lingbia.
Wow, that's absurd.
Do you feel stronger?
Yeah, right?
It's pretty amazing. And in that 717 tons of Lingbia that we removed, we calculated it out using a special formula that DEP gave us. And there are the guys loading up the barge right there. You can see on the TV there, Mike.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that with the audience a little bit. Can you talk to the audience a little bit about that kind of work?
Sure. So right now what you see is probably a crew of around 4 people. They're going into a dense mat of Lingbia, and they're pulling it up one layer at a time with a pitchfork.
Yep.
And you can see where the bad vegetation is, or the favorable vegetation is to keep, and where the Lingbia is to remove.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, because if you're doing it by hand, and you can see the audience can see that terrible hairy Lingbia coming up, it's just absolutely rotten, nasty Lingbia, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has a real stench to it, and it's just
when you
bad
pick
stuff.
that up off the bottom of Kings Bay, are you amazed that that stuff is sitting on the bottom?
Yeah, for sure. It's just years of pile up in some places.
Yeah, it's just piling up. What they DEP is calling it is legacy nutrients. So what that means is that just has been built up over the years. And so what's happened is the beautiful white sand bottoms of Kings Bay is just covered with what you're pitchforking off the bottom.
Exactly.
And I see that you're pitchforking very close to a dock there. And I have a lot of people always say, well, Art, can't a machine do it? Can a machine do it? What do you think about that, Michael? Could a machine be doing what those kids are doing there?
Well, this area in particular has got a lot of rocks, but machines can't get that close to docks anyway.
Yeah.
But this area right here is, you're avoiding huge boulders that would tear up a machine if they were to go out there. So this is a lot more sensitive work.
Yeah, it's very careful when you're doing it by hand. You guys pull out crab traps.
Right.
You pull out big timbers and stuff, mm-hmm. and all sorts of garbage out of there. So it's just amazing you're able to get that Lingbia out from underneath docks.
Right.
And no machine can do that. Mm-hmm. And of course the other thing is that where we are cleaning in Cedar Cove, that area has been cleaned by machines many times, hasn't it?
Right.
So obviously they didn't get it all, or they weren't able to get all that legacy nutrients of a sufficient quantity and clean it sufficiently enough to allow the restoration of the bay.
Right.
Because you're finding it, and when you're out there picking it up, Michael, how deep? I mean, those mats are still pretty deep, aren't they?
Oh, there's some places where mats are easily 3 foot deep.
Yeah.
More, but 3 foot's probably our limit for working in.
Yeah, because you're standing there, right? Mm-hmm. And so as you're walking along, you feel your feet go down.
Yeah.
Into the muck,
and
right?
You can kind of feel the crunch of hydrilla, and you can just by feeling it out, you can see where a good area to work is, and you can feel how gross certain areas are because of the huge mats.
Right.
And there's nothing else but that there.
Right. And so you always go after those spots where it's all Lingbia. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which are usually, crevices.
Uh-huh.
So the harvester couldn't get into that either.
Yeah.
Like spring vent openings.
Yeah, and so when you say,
such.
when explain to the audience a little bit more about when you say the crunch of hydrilla, when you're walking out there to find the Lingbia, you're walking out with those barges and you're walking across some SAV at the bottom, some of that hydrilla, and that wasn't there when you started the project, was it?
No, well, sure wasn't.
And that's real important to point out, is that as we are cleaning out these mats of Lingbia, the beneficial SAV it's like, thank you very much, and it just shows up and starts growing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it blows up.
Yeah.
It totally invades the area, and it's healthy. It cleans the water. It feeds the manatees.
Yep. And I went out there snorkeling the other day with one of the guys from Swift Mud when we were going out to plot those spring vents that you're opening up.
Right.
And I was amazed at how much beneficial SAV there is on the bottom where we've cleaned.
Oh, yeah.
And so, starting with, from the job site, as we're working out, you're getting the Lingbia. It's almost like the plants are following right behind you, aren't
That's
they?
exactly right.
Yeah. Do you hear that, audience? That's exactly right. Tell them that again.
Yeah, that's what's happening is once the Lingbia invasion is over, the preferred SAV comes back.
Right. So you've got hydrilla in there, you've got southern naiad in there, you've got some milfoils in there,
Yeah,
you've got some
milfoils.
coontails in there, you've got a
Right.
bunch of different plants. And that in theory, if we have enough of those plants, that in theory should eventually be able to out-compete the Lingbia, shouldn't it?
For sure. Hydrilla could potentially outbeat Lingbia alone, but with that type of biodiversity coming back, it's definitely going to keep it away.
Yeah, and that helps clean the water. So now, as we're cleaning those benthic mats off the bottom, getting rid of that Lingbia, now Mother Nature's coming in to help us, which is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yes, it sure is.
Yeah, because my dream is that as we clean out Cedar Cove and we get that whole cove clean, then we move over to Magnolia Cove, and we're able to see Cedar Cove just become this almost like a Three Sisters, those beautiful springs. And it was amazing. Like I say, I was out there the other day with Swift Mud, and we were plotting some of the springs that were uncovered. And I understand you're working on another spring vent now. And so we're going to be back here in a few minutes, and we're going to talk about that other spring vent that we're uncovering, because every single spring vent that we uncover is just amazing how much more fresh water comes through there. So Art Jones with One Rake at a Time. Stay tuned. We'll be right back, and we'll talk some more about those big spring vents we've been discovering. Yeah. Welcome back to One Rake at a Time. I'm your host, Art Jones, and today my guest is Michael Shappett. And we were just talking about the spring vents that the crew is uncovering, and Mike's the supervisor of the crew. And tell us a little bit more about those spring vents.
Well, so you can kind of discover spring vents. It's kind of difficult to distinguish them between Lingua mats and then the soft sand that's kind of saturated. And so you dig down into the Lingua enough and you can feel spring water out of nowhere.
You can feel that cool water coming up.
Right, so then you know you're starting to open something up.
Yeah, because this is summertime, and so the water that you're in now is maybe 80 degrees or so.
Right, yeah.
And
It's getting very warm from the sun.
Okay, so now when you're picking up that Lingua, and then all of a sudden you feel that cool blast of 72-degree spring water. And you can feel that right through your wetsuits. Mm-hmm. Yep, it's nice and cool, isn't it?
Yeah, right through the boots.
Yeah, and when they feel that, they know that there's a spring vent down there. And what do you guys do?
We just focus most of our attention on it.
Yeah.
Usually we pull out a lot of trash and even more Lingua from those spring vents. And the more we work on it, the easier it becomes to clean because the water itself helps push Lingua out.
Flush that.
Exactly.
That out.
So
it's
more like sits on a rim than sinks into a hole.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and most of the spring vents are down in this hole, and so over time, I guess trash and stuff kind of, it goes to the bottom. Mm-hmm. So it ends up in the deeper sections. So as you're taking out a benthic mat of Lingua that may be only a foot thick here over that spring vent may actually be covered by 3 or 4 feet mixed with, when you say trash, broken glass.
Oh yeah,
cans,
crab traps, steel pipes,
saturated wood.
Right.
I noticed you've been pulling
cedar
a lot
shake.
of old wood, old cedar shakes.
That definitely clogs it.
Yeah, radios, old scuba gears, old fishing spears, all sorts of things are down there. Isn't that interesting? And just to stay with that thought for a minute, so these spring vents are a little bit deeper than the general land surrounding it. So as they were some of the first things to fill in, because as the Lingua grows and the sediments, it's going to go to that deepest spot. So you've cleaned out all the area around there. So you're cleaning out the shallow areas. Now when we clean out those deep areas, the shallow areas can't refill it, can they?
Exactly, right. So it's starting from the shallower water is definitely a preventative measure.
That makes so much sense, doesn't it?
For sure.
That if you start in the shallow areas first and you clean up all the shallow areas, then when you go down and clean up those spring vents, the shallow areas aren't going to fill that vent up again. So now it's cleaned out. Now you can get that spring vent cleaned out, and now it stays cleaned out. That's why those springs that you guys have uncovered are still flowing. Mm-hmm. So as we got down there and we cleaned those out, they haven't filled in. I know there was a terrible problem down in Chasowitska. The spring vent there was all clogged up, and Swift Mud spent $1.2 million in there cleaning it up. And they cleaned up like 1.5 acres around, and they went into the deep vent and they cleaned it all up, and they got it all out, and what happened?
It just filled right back up.
All the shallow stuff said, oh, sort of creep. It's just kind of, because Lingua is not, it moves, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
It's like creeping.
Storms and tides.
It's like creeping crud.
Right.
Yeah, all that rotten Lingua. So it went back down into the spring vent. So we don't want to do that same mistake here in Kings Bay. That's why I love the one rake at a time project, because we're attacking that problem the smart way. Let's get all the easy stuff first. Let's get all those shallow areas first and get those shallow areas cleaned up. And then as we get those shallow areas cleaned up, then we can attack those deeper vents. And then we've already honed our skills and we're good, we know what we're doing there, and then we'll get those cleaned up. I've got my barge that, if that thing's too deep, we have rakes that have 16-foot long handles on them. Mm-hmm. So if we get the whole area cleaned up and we know there's a spring vent there, we can just take that Thatcher rake, get down there and start cleaning out that vent that way. And what an economical way to do it also.
Absolutely.
And let's talk about the economics of it a little bit. Let's refer again to the Swift Mud project. And I love Swift Mud. They are absolutely wonderful people, and they come in and at least they do something.
Right. Yeah.
And they've spent a lot of money on that project down there, and they had it clean for a while. But they spent a lot, but they brought in a huge dredging company. And they had divers down there, and they were dredging it all out, and it cost $1.2 million, and they removed 7,000 pounds of nitrogen pollution and 500 pounds of phosphorus pollution. And that was published in their report. Now, we had $100,000 by hand. We removed, for 100,000, 64,000 pounds of nitrogen.
That's right.
And those are using the DEP formulas that was sent to me by DEP by the percentage of nitrogen in every cubic foot of Lingbia. So for $100,000 by hand, you remove 64,000 pounds of nitrogen pollution versus 1.2 million and only 7,000 pounds. And I mean, that's really the beauty of hand raking, because hand raking, there's no overhead. I mean, you guys are out there, and you know, we're all out there working together cleaning it. I'm a volunteer. The guys that are in the water right now are getting paid for production. We pay them just $2.77 a cubic foot. And a cubic foot of Lingbia weighs about 60 pounds. That's a lot of weight.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And you can see they fill those barges as full as those barges can be full until those barges are basically sunk. If you put any more on there, the barge starts to get tipsy. So I would say just fill them until you've sunk those pontoons below the water line. And that seems to work out perfect. And then you can see the guys are walking it back. They're very careful, one on each side. At the beginning of the project, one got a little out of control. That Lingbia starts to move.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't want that. You don't want them tipping over, because it's a lot of work to put it on there. And that's amazing. There's no overhead. So it's not like, you know, we're not a big dredging company where you've got the owner of the company that makes a profit off of it.
Right.
You've got the managers that make a profit of it. You've got people standing around supervising that make profits. And you know, so by doing it just by hand, you're putting the money directly into the community. We're giving the money directly to the people that are physically doing it. And now the young people that are doing it, as they grow up, because they always heard stories from their parents about how, oh, it used to be beautiful. As they grow up and they've cleaned it, they're going to be much more inclined to stay on top of it.
They've invested their own time into it.
Right. So they're going to be interested in maintaining that bay too. So the future generation is involved. What a wonderful thing this hand raking program has become. So anyway, Art Jones, one rake at a time. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So stay with us. We'll be right back and talk about where all that Lingbia goes. Yeah, Art Jones with One Rake at a Time. Welcome back. I was just talking with my guest here, Michael Shappett. And we were just talking about, in the other section, about the amount of nitrogen that was being removed and figuring out what that price was in a way that maybe the audience could figure it out. Michael, what did we just figure out?
Well, we just took the $1.2 million that they spent in Chaz and divided it by the 7,000 pounds, and it came out to $171 per pound.
Right, so it cost them approximately $171.40 per pound. For every pound of nitrogen removed, it cost them $171.40. Now, our project, doing it by hand, for every pound of nitrogen removed, it cost $1.50.
$1.50.
$1.50. Because for $100,000, we removed over 64,000 pounds. So that's $171,000 for large-scale, or $171 per pound for large-scale dredging versus $1.50 a pound by hand raking. And you know, it's funny because the other day someone said, "Well, Art, that's great, but you can't hand rake the whole bay. You know, hand raking is not going to clean the bay up." And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you know what? Hand raking is the only thing that is cleaning up the bay.
That's right.
Yeah, between the harvesters, the county machines already got the harvesters out there, and they've been able to keep that bay alive, but they haven't been able to restore it because they haven't been able to get down to all that legacy nutrients out of the crevices. So really, hand raking is what's going to clean the bay.
It's the only thing that's going to restore the springs.
It is the only thing that's going to restore the springs. So, you know, it reminds me of an old saying. Was it a Margaret Mead saying that somebody says that a few well-intentioned people can't change the world and improve things? And she says, no, that's the only thing that can.
Right.
That's the only thing that can do it. Well, now we've got a group of very well-intentioned people here willing to put their backs and their labor into it. You know, since this project began, we've had over 1,000 volunteers come out and rake. I mean,
that's spectacular.
Yeah. You know, the first year we did it, we removed 105 tons of Lyngbya by hand. The second year was over 1,000 tons, but that was also counting mechanical.
Right, right.
Now we're doing it again only by hand, and there was 717 tons right from this grant, and then we have another grant that we've been working on, the NOAA grant. So we've removed a lot more tonnage there.
Absolutely.
So, and now we've got the Duke Energy money. They gave us some money, and then we have the money that we've raised through Rotary. I've had dinners at the Seminole Club building and things like that, and we have the Stone Crab Jam that helps raise money for this project. Other Rotaries have donated money to this project. So, you know, we're still funding it, and it's just so amazing that we're probably already over 1,000 tons removed by hand this year.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So we really need to keep this project going. So we're going to be organizing some more fundraisers to keep it going, so we can get out there and we can really convince people that actually hand raking is a cure for the bay. You know, it's great if somebody comes along with a big dredge machine and stuff. We'll get out of their way and let them do it. But you know, that will come and then that will go. But the hand raking is going to be what maintains it. It's going to be what gets it out underneath the docks. It's going to be what gets it out every single week. And that's the beauty of it, is we are out there every single week pulling this out. So that every single week, the bay is just a little bit better. It is just incrementally cleaner every week.
That's
and
right.
We've seen that right there in Cedar Cove, haven't we?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, that water quality has just improved dramatically. Mm-hmm. The fish have come back, and the manatees are even poking around in there. There they are. They're taking the big shovelfuls of this stuff, and they're throwing it into that dump trailer. And how much does a shovelful of that weigh? That's pretty heavy, isn't it? That's 50, 60 pounds on that shovel.
Easily.
Yeah, and so with that just gets out of there. So it's a wonderful thing. We've had so many people, and a big thank you goes out to Senator Charlie Dean, who helped us get that Beaches and Mine grant, that $100,000 grant, to Jimmy Smith, who was also very supportive of that project. Shout out to Duke Energy, once again, thanking them. We had a volunteer cleanup day with Duke Energy where they all showed up last year, and we removed over 12 tons by hand, all volunteers, out there at Hunter Springs. It's funny, the last time we had a cleanup at Hunter Springs, people were saying, hey, Art, you're like almost running out of Lingbia here. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good
That's
problem.
a good thing. And the city of Crystal River has been absolutely wonderful helping us, providing access for us to get those out of there. And I see on the screen now there's a cleanup at Three Sisters. And that's coming up in September, Save Our Waters Week. We're going to have on Monday of Save Our Waters Week, we're having a big cleanup at Hunter Springs Park. And then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're going to have cleanup at Three Sisters. And it's going to be scuba divers are going to be down there hand raking that stuff out of the spring vents, basically grabbing it with their hands and putting it in little seam bags. Because look, there's Three Sisters. That is so beautiful. We've been cleaning that up every single year. And because of the amount of traffic it gets in there and the amount of people in there, it stays clean. It's just absolutely beautiful. So the other really fantastic news is that we have another One Rake at a Time project beginning down in the Homosassa River. And it's the Homosassa Rotary down there that got a grant for $10,000 from Rotary. It's one of our district grants, and they're starting a project down there. And the first cleanup down there is going to be August 23rd, starting at 8 a.m. in the morning. That's a Saturday. It's going to be in the park. We're having to limit it to just 50 people initially because it's the first time at the park, and there's just sidewalks there. We can't get our big trucks or anything in there, so we're just going to do some careful hand raking in there. Very low impact and careful hand raking, but it's right off of the main swimming area, right down from that bridge there at the park, where so many people in the community love to swim. So that's an amazing thing now that One Rake at a Time, we started here in Crystal River, Kings Bay, and we already have a full-scale operation going down in Weeki Wachee. The Rotaries down there have picked up the ball, and that's beautiful down there, Weeki Wachee. And now we need to get it going in Homosassa. I've had talks with up in Chiefland. Vanity Springs has a problem. Vanity Springs, they're trying to get one started up there. We need to get one going down in Chassahowitzka, though, don't we?
Absolutely.
Because it was really, it really broke my heart that when Swiftmud came in there and cleaned it up, nobody in the community was there to help try to maintain it.
Right, yeah, it just went to the wayside.
Yeah, they just said, well, they cleaned it up, let's see what happens. And they stood there and then it all filled in. We're not going to let that happen here, are we?
No way.
We're on top of it. We're going to make sure that if we're lucky enough to get some dredge machines in there and really get out some of those big spring vents, we're going to make sure all those shallow areas are cleaned up and not going back in there. So we're working hard on this project, one rake at a time. That's what it's about. Every rake you take out is one less rake in there, and every day that bay is just a little bit cleaner. So thanks for watching us today. Thank everybody out there for all of your support. Stay tuned for upcoming fundraising events and cleanups in the paper, in the Chronicle. Everything's in there and on our Facebook page. Art Jones, One Rake at a Time. See you next month.